Paisley never imagined herself as the type to steal someone else's husband. Yet there she was, deeply in love with Hudson, a man 19 years her senior who had left his family to be with her. Her mother had warned her about the age difference, but Paisley's infatuation with Hudson's charm and maturity had silenced all doubts. They married, and she thought she had found her happily ever after. But the cracks began to show. Hudson's past infidelities resurfaced, and he continued to pursue other women, leaving Paisley in a state of emotional turmoil. She tried to confront him, but his dismissive attitude and smooth apologies always left her feeling more confused and hurt. Paisley sat on the couch, staring at the clock. It was past midnight, and Hudson still wasn't home. She felt the familiar pang of anxiety in her chest, knowing he was probably with someone else. Her phone buzzed, and she quickly grabbed it, hoping it was Hudson. Instead, it was a message from her best friend, Claire. "Is he home yet?" Claire's message read. Paisley sighed and typed back, "No, still out. I don't know what to do, Claire." "Talk to him." "You deserve better," Claire replied. Paisley knew Claire was right, but talking to Hudson always ended the same way. He would charm his way out of the situation, and she'd be left feeling guilty for even bringing it up. Finally, around 2 a.m., she heard the front door open. Hudson walked in, his shirt untucked and smelling faintly of perfume. Paisley's heart sank. "Where have you been?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Hudson smiled that charming smile that had once made her weak in the knees. "Out with some clients, you know how it is. Sorry I'm late." Paisley stood up, crossing her arms. "It's always the same excuse, Hudson. Are you seeing someone else?" He chuckled and shook his head. "Paisley, come on. You know I love you. Why would you even think that?" "Because you keep coming home late, smelling like someone else's perfume." Her voice broke, and she hated how vulnerable she sounded. Hudson walked over and wrapped his arms around her. "You're being paranoid. You know you're the only one for me." Despite herself, Paisley leaned into his embrace, feeling the tears start to fall. "Then why does it feel like I'm losing you?" Hudson kissed the top of her head. "You're not losing me, sweetheart. I'm right here." But even as he said the words, Paisley felt the emptiness growing inside her. She knew Hudson was lying, but she didn't have the strength to fight anymore. The next morning, Paisley sat in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee. Claire called, and she picked up, needing to hear a friendly voice. "Hey, how are you holding up?" Claire asked gently. "Same old," Paisley replied with a sigh. "He came home late again, same excuses." Claire was silent for a moment. "Paisley, you don't have to live like this. There are other options." Paisley knew Claire was hinting at leaving Hudson, but the thought terrified her. "I know, but I still love him, Claire. I just wish things were different." "They won't change unless you make a change," Claire said softly. "Just think about it, okay?" "I will," Paisley promised, though deep down she wasn't sure if she had the courage to follow through. Later that day, as Paisley was tidying up the living room, Hudson came in, looking more serious than usual. "Paisley, we need to talk," he said, sitting down on the couch. Paisley felt a lump form in her throat. "About what?" Hudson sighed. "I know I've been distant lately. Work has been stressful, and I haven't been fair to you." She stared at him, waiting for the but that was surely coming. "But I promise to do better. You mean everything to me, and I don't want to lose you." Paisley wanted to believe him, but the wounds were still fresh. "Hudson, I need to know that you mean it. No more late nights, no more lies." He took her hand and looked into her eyes. "I mean it, Paisley. No more lies." For the first time in a long while, Paisley felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But as she watched Hudson leave for work that evening, the familiar anxiety crept back in. She wanted to believe him, but trust once broken is hard to rebuild. And so, Paisley continued to live in the shadow of doubt, hoping that one day Hudson would truly be the man she fell in love with. Desperate for an escape from her troubled marriage, Paisley enrolled in an art course at the local community centre. She needed something to distract her, to reignite the passion and creativity she once had. Little did she know that this decision would lead to a new beginning she never expected. On the first day of class, Paisley walked into the bright, airy room filled with canvases and easels. She felt a flutter of nerves and excitement. It had been years since she picked up a paintbrush, and she hoped she could still find joy in it. "Hi there, you must be new," a cheerful voice said behind her. Paisley turned to see a tall, curly-haired man with a paint-splattered apron and an infectious smile. "Yeah." "First day," Paisley replied, trying to match his enthusiasm. "I'm Levi, the instructor," he said, extending his hand. "What's your name?" "Paisley," she said, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too, Paisley. Why don't you grab an easel and some supplies? We'll get started in a bit." Paisley nodded and found a spot near the window, where the natural light poured in. As she set up her materials, she couldn't help but steal glances at Levi. There was something about his energy that was magnetic. Levi started the class with a brief introduction to different painting techniques. Paisley listened intently, trying to absorb as much as she could. As the students began working on their first projects, Levi moved around the room, offering guidance and encouragement. When he reached Paisley's easel, he paused and looked at her work. "That's really good," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Thanks," Paisley said, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "It's been a while since I painted." "Well, you've got a natural talent," Levi said. "Just remember to let the brush flow. Don't overthink it." Paisley nodded, feeling a bit more confident. As she worked, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The act of painting allowed her to escape from her worries and immerse herself in the moment. After class, Levi approached Paisley again. "Hey, a few of us are going for coffee. You want to join?" Paisley hesitated. She didn't usually socialize much outside of her small circle, but something about Levi made her want to say yes. Sure, why not? The group walked to a nearby cafe, and Paisley found herself chatting easily with Levi and the other students. They talked about art, life, and their dreams. Paisley realized how much she had missed this kind of connection. "So what got you into painting?" Levi asked as they sipped their coffees. Paisley shrugged. "I used to paint a lot when I was younger. Life got in the way, I guess." Levi nodded. "Yeah, life has a way of doing that, but it's never too late to pick it up again. Art is a great way to find yourself." Paisley smiled. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." Days turned into weeks, and Paisley found herself looking forward to her art classes more and more. She and Levi grew closer, sharing more about their lives. Levi's passion for art was contagious, and his kindness and genuine interest in her made Paisley feel seen and appreciated. One afternoon, as they were packing up after class, Levi asked, "Hey, do you want to grab dinner sometime? Just the two of us?" Paisley's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't felt this kind of excitement in years. "I'd like that," she said, trying to sound casual. They met at a cozy little restaurant a few days later. Over dinner they talked and laughed, the conversation flowing effortlessly. Levi was charming and attentive, and Paisley felt a connection she hadn't felt with anyone in a long time. "Tell me more about you," Levi, Paisley said, leaning in. "What made you become an artist?" Levi smiled, looking thoughtful. "I've always loved creating. Art has always been my escape, my way of making sense of the world. Teaching lets me share that with others. What about you? What brought you back to painting?" Paisley hesitated, then decided to be honest. "Honestly, my marriage is complicated. Painting is my way of finding myself again." Levi reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm glad you found your way back to it. You're an amazing artist, Paisley, and an amazing person." Paisley felt a warmth spread through her. "Thank you, Levi. That means a lot." As the evening drew to a close, Levi walked Paisley home. They stood at her doorstep, neither wanting the night to end. "I had a great time tonight," Levi said, his eyes soft and sincere. "Me too," Paisley replied, feeling a flutter of happiness. Levi hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her gently. Paisley's heart raced as she kissed him back, feeling a spark she hadn't felt in years. "Good night, Paisley," Levi whispered, pulling away reluctantly. "Good night, Levi," she said, watching him walk away. As she entered her house, Paisley felt a mix of emotions. She knew her life was about to get even more complicated, but for the first time in a long time she felt hopeful. She had found a new beginning, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. Their relationship began innocently enough, with Levi offering to walk Paisley home and the two of them sharing long conversations about art, life, and their dreams. But as weeks turned into months, their connection deepened. Levi's passion for life and art reignited a spark within Paisley, and before long, they found themselves entangled in a passionate affair. Paisley felt alive again, but guilt gnawed at her. Hudson was aging and his health was deteriorating. She couldn't abandon him, especially now when he needed her the most. Yet the pull towards Levi was irresistible. Paisley and Levi spent more and more time together, often meeting in hidden corners of the park or quiet cafes where they wouldn't be recognized. One afternoon, as they strolled through a secluded part of the park, Levi reached for Paisley's hand. "This is getting harder," Paisley said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hate sneaking around." Levi stopped walking and turned to face her. "I know, Paisley. I hate it too. But I can't stay away from you. You're all I think about." Paisley looked into Levi's eyes, filled with a mixture of longing and sadness. "I feel the same way, but Hudson, he needs me. He's not well." Levi sighed, running a hand through his curly hair. "I get it. I really do. But what about what you need? Don't you deserve to be happy too?" Paisley felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "It's not that simple. I made vows, Levi. I promised to take care of him." Levi pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I know you're a good person, Paisley. That's one of the reasons I love you. But you can't keep sacrificing your happiness forever." Paisley rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. Their secret meetings continued, each one more intense and passionate than the last. They found solace in each other, their love a refuge from the complications of their everyday lives. But the weight of their affair hung heavy over them, and Paisley's guilt grew with each passing day. One evening, after a particularly emotional encounter, Levi took Paisley's face in his hands. "Paisley, we need to talk about this. I can't keep doing this if there's no future for us." Paisley's heart ached at the thought of losing him. "I don't want to lose you, Levi, but I can't just leave Hudson. Not now." Levi's eyes searched hers, full of pain and determination. "Then what do we do? We can't keep living like this, sneaking around, lying to everyone." Paisley felt torn in two. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe we need to take a break. Give me some time to figure things out." Levi looked devastated, but he nodded. Okay, I'll give you time. But I can't wait forever, Paisley." Back at home, the atmosphere grew more strained. Hudson seemed oblivious to her inner turmoil, focused instead on his own declining health. He spent most of his days watching TV, rarely engaging with Paisley. It was as if they were living in two separate worlds under the same roof. One night, as they sat in the living room, Hudson suddenly spoke up. "You've been different lately, Paisley. Is everything okay?" Paisley froze, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Hudson sighed, looking tired. "I don't know. You seem distant, like your mind is somewhere else." Paisley forced a smile. "Just stressed, I guess. A lot going on." Hudson nodded, but his eyes held a hint of suspicion. "If there's something you need to tell me, you can." Paisley felt a lump in her throat. There's nothing, Hudson. I'm just tired. Days turned into weeks, and the strain of their double lives took its toll on Paisley. She missed Levi desperately, but she knew she couldn't continue the affair without tearing her life apart. One afternoon, while cleaning the house, she found an old photo of her and Hudson from happier times. She stared at it, feeling a wave of nostalgia and sadness. Hudson walked in, noticing the photo in her hand. Remember that day? Our trip to the beach. Paisley nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, it was a good day. Hudson sat down beside her, his expression softening. I miss those days. I miss us. Paisley felt tears welling up in her eyes. Me too. Hudson took her hand, squeezing it gently. Maybe we can find our way back there. I know I've been distant. I'm sorry, Paisley. Paisley felt a pang of guilt. It's not just you, Hudson. I've been distant too. We both have. Hudson nodded. Let's try to fix that. Let's try to be better. Paisley wanted to believe it was possible, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was too late. Their love had been tarnished by too many lies and betrayals. One evening, as Paisley was preparing dinner, her phone buzzed with a message from Levi. She hesitated, then opened it. Can we meet? I miss you. Paisley's heart ached. She knew she couldn't keep living this way, torn between duty and desire. She had to make a choice. After dinner, she told Hudson she needed some air and walked to the park where she and Levi often met. He was already there, waiting for her. Paisley, he said, his voice filled with emotion as he reached for her hand. I can't keep doing this. I need to know if there's a future for us. Paisley looked at him, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Levi, but I can't leave Hudson. Not now. He's getting worse. Levi pulled her into a tight embrace. I understand, but it's killing me to be apart from you. Paisley held on to him, knowing this was likely the last time they would be together like this. I don't know what the future holds, but I can't abandon him now. Levi nodded, his eyes filled with sorrow. I love you, Paisley. I'll be here if you ever need me. As they parted, Paisley felt a deep sense of loss, but also a glimmer of hope. She had made a choice, and now she had to live with it. She returned home, determined to find a way to make peace with her decisions and rebuild her life, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness for the sake of those she loved. Balancing her life between Hudson and Levi was exhausting. Paisley found herself making excuses to spend time with Levi, savoring the moments of joy and freedom he brought into her life. But at home, the atmosphere grew more strained. Hudson seemed oblivious to her inner turmoil, focused instead on his own declining health. Scarlett, Paisley's daughter from a previous relationship, returned home from college for the summer. Observant and intuitive, Scarlett noticed the changes in her mother. She remarked on Paisley's newfound energy and even joked about her looking younger, unaware of the real reason behind it. One morning, Paisley woke up early, determined to get through her day without the constant guilt gnawing at her. She prepared breakfast, trying to focus on the simple tasks at hand. Scarlett walked into the kitchen, yawning. Morning, Mum. You're up early. Paisley smiled, handing Scarlett a cup of coffee. Yeah, couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get a head start. Scarlett raised an eyebrow. You seem different lately. Happier. What's going on? Paisley hesitated, then shrugged. Just trying to stay positive, I guess. There's been a lot on my mind. Scarlett nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. Well, whatever it is, it's working. You look great. Later that day, Paisley met Levi at their usual spot in the park. As soon as she saw him, the weight of her double life seemed to lift, if only for a moment. Levi smiled as he saw her approaching. Hey, you! Paisley smiled back, feeling the familiar rush of emotions. Hey, I missed you. Levi pulled her into a hug, holding her close. I missed you too. How are things at home? Paisley sighed, leaning into him. It's hard. Scarlett's back for the summer, and Hudson, he's getting worse. Levi nodded, his expression serious. I hate seeing you like this, Paisley. I wish things were different. Paisley pulled back slightly to look at him. Me too. But right now, this is all we have. Levi kissed her gently. Then let's make the most of it. As the weeks went by, Paisley continued to juggle her responsibilities at home with her stolen moments with Levi. She became adept at hiding her tracks, making sure not to leave any evidence of her affair. But the strain was taking its toll. One evening, as she was getting ready to leave the house, Hudson called out from the living room. Paisley, where are you going? Paisley froze, then forced a casual tone. Just out for a walk. I need some fresh air. Hudson frowned. You've been going out a lot lately. Is everything okay? Paisley forced a smile. Everything's fine, Hudson. I just need some time to clear my head. Hudson looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, just be careful. Paisley left the house, her heart pounding. She hated lying to Hudson, but she couldn't give up Levi. Not yet. That night, as Paisley and Levi lay together in his small apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. She turned to Levi, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. Levi looked at her, his expression filled with concern. What's wrong? Paisley sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. It's just so hard balancing everything. I hate lying to Hudson. And now Scarlett's back, and I'm constantly worried she'll find out. Levi held her close, stroking her hair. I know it's hard, but I'm here for you, Paisley. Whatever you need. Paisley buried her face in his chest, feeling the tears spill over. I just wish things were different. Levi kissed the top of her head. Me too. But we'll get through this. Together. The next day, as Paisley was cleaning the house, Scarlett walked in, looking troubled. Mum, can we talk? Paisley set down her cleaning supplies, wiping her hands on her apron. Of course, sweetie. What's on your mind? Scarlett sat down at the kitchen table, fidgeting with her hands. It's about Dad. I'm worried about him. Paisley felt a pang of guilt. I know, Scarlett. He's been struggling. But we're doing the best we can. Scarlett looked up, her eyes filled with worry. I just feel like something's not right. Like there's something you're not telling me. Paisley took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. Scarlett, there's a lot going on. But I promise you we're doing everything we can to take care of him. Scarlett nodded, but Paisley could see the doubt in her eyes. Okay, I want him to be okay. Paisley reached out and squeezed Scarlett's hand. So do I, sweetie. So do I. As the summer wore on, Paisley's double life became increasingly difficult to manage. The constant lying and sneaking around were taking a toll on her, and she knew it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. One evening, as she was getting ready to meet Levi, Hudson called her into the living room. Paisley, we need to talk. Paisley felt her heart sink. What is it, Hudson? Hudson looked at her, his expression serious. I know something's been going on. You've been distant and I can't ignore it anymore. Paisley felt a lump form in her throat. Hudson, He held up a hand to stop her. Just tell me the truth, Paisley. Are you seeing someone else? Paisley's heart raced as she struggled to find the right words. Hudson, Before she could finish, Scarlett walked in, her eyes wide with shock. Mum, what is he talking about? Paisley felt the room spinning around her. Scarlett, Hudson looked at Scarlett, then back at Paisley. Just tell us the truth, Paisley. Paisley took a deep breath, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I've been seeing someone else. The room fell silent as Hudson and Scarlett stared at her in disbelief. Paisley felt her world crumbling around her, knowing there was no going back. That night, Paisley met Levi in the park, her heart heavy with sorrow. "I told them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Levi looked at her, his expression filled with concern. How did they take it? Paisley shook her head, tears streaming down her face. It was awful. "I don't know what to do." Levi pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I'm here for you, Paisley. Whatever happens, we'll get through this together." Paisley clung to him, knowing that her double life was finally unraveling. She had made her choice, and now she had to face the consequences. Scarlett decided to take an art class to bond with her mother, and to Paisley's horror, it was the same class taught by Levi. Scarlett's admiration for Levi was immediate and intense. She talked about him constantly, her eyes shining with the same excitement Paisley had felt. Paisley tried to hide her anxiety as Scarlett chatted excitedly about her first art class. They were sitting in the kitchen, Scarlett flipping through her sketchbook. "Mom, you won't believe it. Levi is such an amazing teacher. He's so passionate and talented." "Look at what I drew today," Scarlett said, showing her mother a sketch. Paisley forced a smile, glancing at the drawing. "That's really good, Scarlett. I'm glad you like the class." Scarlett beamed. "I do. I can't wait to learn more from him. He's really inspiring." Paisley nodded, trying to keep her emotions in check. "That's great, honey. I'm happy for you." Over the next few weeks, Scarlett's admiration for Levi grew. She talked about him constantly, and Paisley could see the same spark in Scarlett's eyes that she herself had once felt. One evening as they were having dinner, Scarlett brought up Levi again. "Mom, Levi said I have real talent. He wants me to consider taking more advanced classes." Paisley felt a pang of jealousy mixed with guilt. "That's wonderful, Scarlett. I'm sure you'll do great." Scarlett nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, I really look up to him. He's more than just a teacher, you know. He's special." Paisley's heart sank. She knew exactly how special Levi was, and it tore her apart to see her daughter falling for him, but she couldn't say anything. She couldn't say anything. She couldn't hurt Scarlett like that. One afternoon, Paisley received a text from Levi asking to meet. She hesitated, then agreed, knowing they needed to talk. When she arrived at their usual spot in the park, Levi was already there, looking troubled. "Paisley, we need to discuss Scarlett." Paisley nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I know. She's really taken with you." Levi sighed. "I don't want to hurt her, Paisley, but I can't lie to her either. She deserves to know the truth." Paisley felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I know, but how do we tell her? How do I tell her that the man she looks up to is the same man I've been involved with?" Levi reached out and took her hand. "We'll figure it out together. But we can't keep this secret forever." As the weeks went by, Paisley became increasingly anxious. She knew the truth would come out eventually, and the thought of Scarlett finding out on her own terrified her. One evening, Scarlett came home from class, looking upset. "Mum, can we talk?" Scarlett asked, her voice trembling. Paisley's heart raced. "Of course, honey. What's wrong?" Scarlett took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. I think I'm in love with Levi." Paisley felt a wave of panic. Scarlett held up a hand to stop her. "I know it's crazy. He's my teacher, and he's older, but I can't help how I feel." Paisley struggled to find the right words. "Scarlett, Levi is. He's not who you think he is." Scarlett looked confused. "What do you mean?" Paisley took a deep breath, feeling her heart breaking. "Levi and we've been seeing each other." Scarlett's eyes widened in shock. "What? How could you? How could you do this to Dad?" Paisley felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Scarlett. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this to happen. Scarlett stood up, her face red with anger and betrayal. I can't believe you. I trusted you, Mum. How could you lie to me like this? Paisley reached out, but Scarlett backed away. Scarlett, please, I never meant for this to happen. I love you. Scarlett shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't even know who you are anymore. The days that followed were a blur of tension and heartache. Scarlett avoided Paisley, spending most of her time out of the house. Paisley tried to reach out, but Scarlett wouldn't listen. One evening, Levi showed up at the house, looking concerned. How are things, he asked as Paisley let him in. Paisley shook her head, tears in her eyes. Awful. She won't talk to me. She hates me, Levi. Levi pulled her into a hug. She doesn't hate you, Paisley. She's hurt and confused. She needs time. Paisley clung to him, feeling the weight of her decisions crashing down on her. What do we do? Levi sighed, holding her close. We give her time, and we stay honest. It's the only way. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the house became unbearable. One night, Scarlett came home late, her eyes red from crying. Scarlett, we need to talk, Paisley said gently. Scarlett looked at her, the hurt and anger still evident in her eyes. What is there to talk about? Paisley took a deep breath. I'm sorry for everything. I know I hurt you and I know I broke your trust, but I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you or your father. Scarlett sat down, looking exhausted. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Mum. You lied to me. You lied to all of us. Paisley nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope that one day you can understand why I did what I did. Scarlett looked away, her expression softening slightly. I don't know, Mum. I just don't know. The days that followed were filled with tentative steps toward healing. Paisley and Scarlett began to talk more, trying to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. It was a slow and painful process, but Paisley was determined to make things right. One afternoon, as they sat in the living room, Scarlett spoke up. I'm thinking about dropping the art class. Paisley looked at her, surprised. Why? You love it. Scarlett shrugged. It's just too complicated now. I can't be around him. Paisley felt a pang of guilt. I understand, but don't give up on your passion because of me. Scarlett nodded, looking thoughtful. I'll think about it. As the summer drew to a close, Scarlett prepared to return to college. The relationship between her and Paisley was still strained, but there were moments of hope. Paisley knew it would take time, but she was willing to do whatever it took to heal their bond. On the day Scarlett left, Paisley hugged her tightly. I love you, Scarlett. I'm so sorry for everything. Scarlett hugged her back, her voice soft. I love you too, Mum. We'll figure this out. Somehow. As Paisley watched Scarlett drive away, she felt a mixture of sadness and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was determined to face it with honesty and courage. For herself, for Hudson, and most of all, for Scarlett. The inevitable confrontation came when Scarlett, determined and headstrong, confessed her feelings for Levi to Paisley. She begged her mother to talk to Levi to convince him to give her a chance. Paisley was torn between her love for Levi and her duty to protect Scarlett. Paisley sat in her bedroom, trying to gather her thoughts. Scarlett had just stormed out after their latest argument, and the house felt eerily quiet. She knew she had to talk to Levi and end things once and for all, but the thought filled her with dread. Her phone buzzed with a message from Levi. Can we talk? It's important. Paisley sighed and replied, Yes, meet me at our spot in an hour. When she arrived at the park, Levi was already there, pacing nervously. He looked up when he saw her, his expression a mix of concern and hope. Paisley, what's going on? Scarlett's been texting me, saying she has feelings for me. I didn't want to believe it until I heard it from you. Paisley took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. It's true, Levi. Scarlett's fallen for you, and she's begging me to talk to you to convince you to give her a chance. Levi ran a hand through his hair, looking distressed. This is a mess. I care about Scarlett, but not in that way. You know that. Paisley nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. I know, but she doesn't. She thinks you might feel the same way, and it's tearing her apart. Levi stepped closer, taking her hands in his. What do we do, Paisley? I can't hurt her, but I can't lose you either. Paisley looked up at him, her heart breaking. We have to end this, Levi. For Scarlett's sake. She needs to believe that you could be there for her. Levi shook his head, his eyes filled with pain. No, Paisley. There has to be another way. We can explain everything to her. She'll understand. Paisley pulled her hands away, tears streaming down her face. No, she won't. She's young and she's hurt. The only way to fix this is to let her believe that there's a chance for you two. Levi's voice trembled. Paisley, please, don't do this. Paisley stepped back, trying to stay strong. I'm sorry, Levi. This is the only way. That night, back at home, Paisley tried to talk to Scarlett. She found her daughter sitting on her bed, staring blankly at the wall. Scarlett, we need to talk, Paisley said gently, sitting down next to her. Scarlett turned to her, her eyes red from crying. What is there to talk about? You ruined everything. Paisley felt her heart ache. I know you're hurting, but I did what I thought was best for you. Scarlett's voice was filled with anger and pain. You always do what's best for you. You never think about me. Paisley took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. That's not true, Scarlett. I love you and I want you to be happy. Scarlett shook her head, tears streaming down her face. If you loved me, you wouldn't have kept this from me. You wouldn't have lied. Paisley reached out, but Scarlett pulled away. I didn't want to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen. Scarlett stood up, her voice trembling with emotion. I can't be around you right now, Mum. I need some space. Paisley watched as Scarlett walked out of the room, feeling completely helpless. She had never felt so torn apart in her life. The days that followed were filled with tension and silence. Scarlett avoided Paisley as much as possible, spending most of her time out of the house or locked in her room. Paisley tried to reach out, but Scarlett's anger and hurt were too deep. One evening, as Paisley was cleaning up after dinner, Hudson called her into the living room. Paisley, we need to talk. Paisley felt a sense of dread as she sat down next to him. What is it, Hudson? Hudson looked at her, his expression serious. I've noticed the tension between you and Scarlett. What's going on? Paisley hesitated, then decided to tell him the truth. Scarlett found out about Levi and me. She's been really hurt and confused. Hudson sighed, rubbing his temples. I was afraid something like this might happen. How are we going to fix this? Paisley felt tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know, Hudson. I'm doing everything I can, but she won't talk to me. Hudson took her hand, his voice softening. We'll get through this, Paisley. We'll find a way to make things right. Paisley nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. I hope so. I just want my family back. One afternoon, Paisley received a call from Scarlett's school. Ms. Walker, this is Principal Harris. Scarlett hasn't been attending classes for the past week. We thought you should know. Paisley felt her heart sink. Thank you for letting me know. I'll take care of it. She immediately went to Scarlett's room, knocking on the door. Scarlett, we need to talk. There was no response, so Paisley opened the door and found Scarlett lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Why haven't you been going to school? Paisley asked, her voice filled with concern. Scarlett shrugged, not meeting her mother's eyes. I don't see the point. Paisley sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to stay calm. Scarlett, you can't just give up on everything. I know you're hurting, but you have to keep going. Scarlett finally looked at her eyes filled with pain. Why should I? Everything I believed in is a lie. Paisley felt tears streaming down her face. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you, Scarlett, and I want to make things right. Scarlett's voice was barely a whisper. How can you make things right when everything is so wrong? Paisley reached out, taking her daughter's hand. We can start by being honest with each other. We can start by trying to heal. Scarlett looked at her mother, and for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Okay, Mum, let's try. As the days went by, Paisley and Scarlett began to rebuild their relationship, one small step at a time. It was a slow and painful process, but Paisley was determined to make things right. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Scarlett spoke up. Mom, I've decided to go back to school. I don't want to give up on my dreams. Paisley felt a surge of pride. I'm so glad to hear that, Scarlett. You have so much potential. Scarlett nodded, looking thoughtful. And I've been thinking about what you said, about being honest and trying to heal. I want to give that a try too. Paisley felt tears welling up in her eyes. Thank you, Scarlett. That means more to me than you know. As the summer drew to a close, Scarlett prepared to return to college. The relationship between her and Paisley was still fragile, but there was a newfound sense of hope. On the day Scarlett left, Paisley hugged her tightly. I love you, Scarlett. I'm so proud of you. Scarlett hugged her back, her voice soft. I love you too, Mum. We'll figure this out, somehow. As Paisley watched Scarlett drive away, she felt a mixture of sadness and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was determined to face it with honesty and courage. For herself, for Hudson, and most of all, for Scarlett. Hudson's health took a turn for the worse, and Paisley devoted herself entirely to his care. Scarlett, hurt and confused by her mother's sudden withdrawal, threw herself into her studies. Paisley and Scarlett's relationship became strained, and the house was filled with an unspoken tension. Hudson's condition continued to deteriorate, and Paisley knew the end was near. She felt the weight of her decisions more heavily than ever, but she was determined to make Hudson's final days as comfortable as possible. One evening, Paisley sat by Hudson's bedside, holding his frail hand. His breathing was shallow, and he looked at her with weary eyes. Paisley, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I need to talk to you. Paisley leaned in closer, tears welling up in her eyes. I'm here, Hudson. What is it? Hudson took a deep breath, struggling to find the words. I know. About you and Levi. Paisley's heart skipped a beat. Hudson, He squeezed her hand weakly, a small smile forming on his lips. It's okay, I knew for a while. I just didn't want to confront it. Paisley felt tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Hudson. I never wanted to hurt you. Hudson nodded slowly. I know. I forgive you, Paisley. We all make mistakes. I just want you to be happy. Paisley felt a wave of guilt and relief wash over her. Thank you, Hudson. That means so much to me. Hudson's eyes grew distant and his grip on her hand loosened. Take care of Scarlett. She needs you. Paisley nodded, her voice trembling. I will, Hudson. I promise. The next morning, Paisley woke up to find Hudson had passed away peacefully in his sleep. She felt a mix of grief and relief, knowing his suffering was finally over. She called Scarlett, who was away at college, to deliver the heartbreaking news. Scarlett, it's Mum, Paisley said, her voice shaking. Dad passed away last night. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Scarlett responded, her voice choked with emotion. I'm so sorry, Mum. I'll be home as soon as I can. The days that followed were a blur of funeral arrangements and condolences. Paisley felt numb, going through the motions as she tried to process her grief. Scarlett returned home, and the two of them navigated their sorrow together, slowly rebuilding their bond. One evening, after the funeral, Paisley and Scarlett sat in the living room, surrounded by photos of Hudson. Scarlett picked up a picture of her parents from their wedding day, looking at it thoughtfully. "Mum, I want to ask you something," Scarlett said quietly. Paisley looked at her, her heart heavy. "What is it, Scarlett?" Scarlett hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Did you love him? Even after everything that happened?" Paisley felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I did. Hudson was my first love, but things got complicated, and I made mistakes. I never stopped caring about him, though." Scarlett nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I get it. Life isn't always black and white." Paisley reached out and took Scarlett's hand. "No, it's not. But we have to learn from our mistakes and move forward." As the weeks passed, Paisley and Scarlett began to find a new rhythm in their lives. They talked more openly about their feelings, and Paisley felt a sense of healing taking place. One afternoon, Paisley decided it was time to visit Levi. She hadn't seen him since they ended their relationship, and she needed closure. She found him at his apartment, working on a painting. "Paisley," Levi said, his voice filled with surprise and emotion. "I didn't expect to see you." Paisley smiled sadly. "I needed to talk to you, Levi. Hudson passed away." Levi's face softened with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Paisley. How are you holding up?" Paisley shrugged, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's been hard. But Scarlett and I are getting through it together." Levi nodded, stepping closer. "I've missed you, Paisley. I've thought about you every day." Paisley felt a pang of longing but knew what she had to do. "I miss you too, Levi. But we can't go back to how things were. Scarlett needs me, and I need to focus on rebuilding my relationship with her." Levi's eyes filled with sadness, but he nodded in understanding. "I get it. You need to do what's best for your family." Paisley stepped closer, placing a hand on his cheek. "Thank you for understanding, Levi. You'll always have a special place in my heart." Levi leaned in and kissed her gently on the forehead. "And you'll always have a special place in mine, Paisley. Take care of yourself." As Paisley left Levi's apartment, she felt a sense of peace. She had said her final goodbye, and it was time to move forward. She returned home, finding Scarlett in the living room, working on her art. "Hey, Mum," Scarlett said, looking up with a smile. "How was your day?" Paisley smiled back, feeling a sense of hope for the future. "It was good, Scarlett. How about we work on some art together?" Scarlett's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." As they sat together, painting and talking, Paisley felt a sense of healing and renewal. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she knew they would face it together, stronger than ever. Months passed since Hudson's death, and life began to settle into a new normal for Paisley and Scarlett. They were both navigating their grief and the complex emotions that came with it, but they were doing it together. The tension that had once filled their home was gradually being replaced by a sense of understanding and love. One Saturday morning, Paisley and Scarlett sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and planning their day. It had become a new ritual for them, a way to reconnect and support each other. "Mum, I was thinking," Scarlett began, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Maybe we should do something special today. You know, in Dad's memory." Paisley smiled softly, feeling a pang of sadness mixed with warmth. "That's a wonderful idea, Scarlett. What do you have in mind?" Scarlett's eyes brightened. "Remember that park we used to go to when I was little? The one with the big oak tree? Let's go there and have a picnic." Paisley nodded, her heart swelling with love for her daughter. "I think that's perfect. Let's make some sandwiches and pack a picnic basket." As they prepared for their outing, the atmosphere was light and filled with laughter. It was a stark contrast to the tension that had once filled their home. Paisley felt a sense of healing taking place, a slow but steady mending of their relationship. When they arrived at the park, they found a spot under the old oak tree and spread out a blanket. The weather was perfect, with a gentle breeze and the sun shining brightly. They sat down, unpacking their picnic, and started reminiscing about the past. "Remember how Dad used to push me on the swings until I was almost flying?" Scarlett said, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. Paisley laughed, feeling a lump in her throat. "He always said you were fearless. You'd laugh and ask to go higher every time." Scarlett smiled, looking down at her sandwich. He was a good dad, even if things got complicated. Paisley reached out and squeezed Scarlett's hand. "He loved you so much, Scarlett, and he was so proud of you." Scarlett looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "I know, Mum, and I know you did your best too. I didn't make it easy for you." Paisley shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "We both made mistakes, Scarlett. But what's important is that we're here now, healing together." Over the next few weeks, Paisley and Scarlett continued to find ways to honor Hudson's memory and strengthen their bond. They took up new hobbies together, attended therapy sessions, and made a point to communicate openly and honestly. One evening, as they were sitting in the living room watching a movie, Scarlett turned to Paisley with a thoughtful expression. "Mum, can I ask you something?" Paisley muted the TV and nodded. "Of course, Scarlett. What's on your mind?" Scarlett hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Do you ever think about Levi?" Paisley felt her heart skip a beat. She had tried to push thoughts of Levi to the back of her mind, focusing instead on rebuilding her life with Scarlett. But the question brought all those emotions rushing back. "I do," sometimes Paisley admitted. "He was a big part of my life, and it's hard to just forget that." Scarlett nodded, looking down at her hands. "I guess I was so focused on my own feelings that I didn't really consider yours. I'm sorry for that." Paisley reached out and took Scarlett's hand. "You were hurting, Scarlett. It's okay. We both had to process things in our own way." Scarlett looked up, her eyes filled with determination. "I think you should reach out to him, Mum, at least to get some closure." Paisley was taken aback. "Are you sure? I don't want to reopen old wounds." Scarlett nodded firmly. "I'm sure. You've been there for me, and I want to be there for you. You deserve to find your own peace too." A few days later, Paisley took Scarlett's advice and called Levi. Her heart raced as she waited for him to answer, unsure of what to expect. "Hello," Levi's familiar voice came through the phone, sending a rush of emotions through Paisley. "Hi, Levi. It's Paisley," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was wondering if we could meet. I think we need to talk." There was a pause on the other end before Levi replied, "I'd like that. How about our usual spot in the park tomorrow afternoon?" Paisley agreed, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The next day, Paisley arrived at the park early, her nerves on edge. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was about closure and healing. When Levi arrived, they shared a tentative smile before sitting down on a bench. There was a moment of awkward silence before Levi spoke. "Paisley, I'm glad you reached out. I've been thinking about you a lot." Paisley nodded, feeling tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I've been thinking about you too, Levi. I needed to see you, to find some closure." Levi reached out and took her hand, his touch familiar and comforting. "I understand. I never stopped caring about you, Paisley." Paisley felt a tear slip down her cheek. "I care about you too, Levi. But things are different now. Scarlett and I are rebuilding our lives, and I need to focus on that." Levi squeezed her hand gently. "I respect that. I'm happy you're finding your way." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. Finally, Paisley spoke. "I want to thank you, Levi, for everything. You helped me rediscover a part of myself that I thought was lost." Levi smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "And you brought joy and inspiration into my life. I'll always cherish that." Paisley took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace. "Goodbye, Levi. Take care of yourself." Levi leaned in and kissed her on the forehead, a final gesture of their connection. "Goodbye, Paisley." As Paisley walked away from the park, she felt a sense of closure. She had faced her past and was ready to embrace her future with Scarlett. When she returned home, Scarlett was waiting for her in the living room. "How did it go?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. Paisley smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. "It went well. We said our goodbyes and I feel at peace." Scarlett hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you, Mum. You've come so far." Paisley hugged her back, feeling a sense of gratitude and love. "We both have, Scarlett, and we're going to be okay." As the days turned into weeks, Paisley and Scarlett continued to heal and grow together. They found joy in the little things, like painting together, cooking meals and sharing their dreams for the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Scarlett turned to Paisley with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, I've been thinking about something." Paisley looked at her, curious. "What's that, Scarlett?" Scarlett smiled, her eyes filled with hope. "I want to start an art gallery, a place where people can come and share their stories through their artwork. I think it would be a great way to honour Dad and everything we've been through." Paisley felt a surge of pride and excitement. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Scarlett, and I'll be right there with you every step of the way." As they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Paisley felt a sense of contentment. The wounds of the past were healing and a new chapter was beginning. She and Scarlett were stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the future held. Paisley and Scarlett's journey had been one of love, loss and healing. They had faced their darkest moments and come out stronger on the other side. Their bond was unbreakable, and they had found a new sense of purpose and joy. The art gallery became a reality, a testament to their resilience and creativity. It was a place where people could find solace and inspiration, just as Paisley and Scarlett had found in each other. As they stood together at the grand opening, surrounded by friends and family, Paisley felt a sense of fulfillment. She had made difficult choices and faced unimaginable challenges, but she had never given up. Looking at Scarlett, Paisley knew that they had both grown and changed in ways they never could have imagined. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready to face it together with love, strength, and unwavering hope. And as they embraced, Paisley whispered, "We've come a long way, Scarlett, and the best is yet to come."
Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.